Well, that was pretty hard to watch, huh? Yeah, it was pretty hard to make too, let me tell you. I apologize for that up front. Hard to start out a video that way, but a couple of things have happened in the last week that really made me change my mind on what I wanted to do for a video for this weekend. So anyway, bear with me. I had first off, thank you so much for being here today. Good to have you here. I appreciate you guys all being here. You know I love you, and I thank you for being here. This video is going to be a little bit heavy on my heart today, as it should be on yours as well. Two things have happened in the past week that really touched my heart, and I just wanted to bring that to you. So this could be a long video, so we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. One thing that I always do anytime I go to a big mega store or big grocery store or Walmart or Home Depot, places like that, I always kind of scan the parking lot when I'm getting out of my car just to see if there's some elderly person or some disabled person or some woman that's got 2 or 3 kids that's got a grocery basket full of stuff and they're unloading. And I always just kind of time it to where I walk by them about the time they're getting it all loaded up and ask them if I can just return their cart for them. I know for a mom with 2 or 3 kids in the car, one of the most terrifying times is leaving the kids in the car and taking that grocery cart to the rack to put it up, things like that. Or just for elderly people or disabled people, it's hard for them. So it's one of those things I've always wanted to do. And last week I was at the grocery and I came out and I was unloading my groceries into my car, and I noticed an elderly woman coming over a few cars down beside me, and I just kind of got everything done, and I was just kind of killing some time until she was down to the last couple of items. And I went up to her car and I said, "Ma'am, can I take your basket and put it up for you?" And she said, "Oh, well, sure. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you." And as I said, "Well, no problem." And I got her card and I was headed to the rack with it. And I heard her say something like, "I thought you were dead." And that was not what she said, but I thought it was. And I turned around and I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "All you nice guys, I thought y'all were all dead." And I just kind of chuckled and made some silly comment. And pulling away from the grocery store, that sweet little old lady's words kind of kept resounding inside my head. And I started thinking, with all the horrible things, all the ugliness that's going on in the world right now, are we indeed witnessing the death of kindness? And like I said, there were 2 things that really spawned this video. That was the first one, the encounter with the little old lady. And the second thing, I lost one of my dear friends this past week. He was the same age I am. And interestingly enough, when I first met him, he was just out of vet school. I was still in school, and I worked at the same vet clinic he worked at. He was an employee. He was a veterinarian and an employee. I was just a student working out there for free, just trying to gain valuable experience. And he and I became fast friends, and soon thereafter, he started to build his own clinic, and I went with him to help him in his new clinic. We did everything from building panels and pens for horses to making calls. And one of my favorite memories about him, we went out on a cold winter's day to a little farm that was just a few acres and had an old shack on it, and kind of in the middle of nowhere. And there was an old man there, and he had one cow. And we got out there, and the cow had an infection. Looked like it had a wound on one of its back legs that we needed to address. Cow's running fever, and she was pretty sick. And the old man told us up front, he said, "Boys, I've only got $8 to my name, but I'll do anything I can to save this cow because she saved me." And we said, "This cow saved you?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Last year during the cold part of the winter," he said, "I completely ran out of food and money and everything else." And he said, "All I had to eat was what little bit of food people would give me, plus the milk of this cow." He said, "She saved me. The least I can do is try to repay the favor." And he said, "I've only got $8. So we went ahead and took care of this little old man's cow. Dr. Lackey my buddy gave her some injections, some antibiotic injections, and we went back out to the truck, and this is when we usually go out and figure the bill and get whatever medications we wanted to leave. And we both jumped in the cab, and I said, "You're not charging him, are you?" And he goes, "No, I can't charge him." And he looked over at me and he said, "You know, Lee, Jesus put us here to take care of each other, and we got to take care of that old man." And Gary was at a point in his practice where he didn't have any money, and I was a student. I didn't have any money either. He goes, "How much money do you have on you?" And I said, "I've got about the same amount that old man has. How about you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've got about the same amount too." So we pawned our money together, what little money we had. And Gary told me, he said, "Just put it in a prescription vial, and to where the man can't tell what it is." He said, "I'll go back in and talk to him." He said, "You bring it in when you get it ready." And I said, "Okay." So he went back in and was talking to the man, and I got the money and put it in a prescription vial, and I got the salve that we needed and put that in another big tub. And I took these medications in there, and we set them down, and we talked to the old man, and then we left. And I think we left him, it was almost $20. So we got back in the truck, and we were driving off, and Gary looked at me and he goes, "What did you write on that prescription label?" And I said, "Use as needed." But that's just the way Gary was. He was a kind man. He was the epitome of kindness. And losing Gary this past week made me think of several things about him, and they all had to do with kindness. It's just one of those. He was just one of those people that was just inherently kind and loving. And I will miss him. Early in my practice, I learned a real lesson about kindness and how you should use it all the time, because you never know what's going on in someone else's life. One of my clients, he was a helicopter pilot in the Vietnam War, and this is him right here hovering over Hamburger Hill. Yeah, he was a hero, but his name was Tom, and Tom was always in the clinic with his little dogs, and his mom would come in once a month with her little dog too, and Tom would always bring her in. She was fairly elderly at this time. She's probably 80, between 80 and 85, somewhere in that range when I first met her. And she wasn't as big as a minute. She was probably about 5 feet tall, but she was spunky. And but she'd always come in, and she'd have her hair all done up and really looking nice, and a real sharp dress on, and jewelry, and just decked out to the nines. You know, she'd come in there, and one time I asked Tom, I said, "Every time you come in here, you're with your mom, y'all are always decked out." I said, "Do y'all go out for lunch or something like that, or do you take her to a doctor or something after you come in here?" And Tom looked at me kind of funny and goes, "No, Lee, she dresses up for you. That's all she does. She goes to the vet once a month, and she gets decked out for it." And I said, she goes to all that trouble just to come in here and let me check her dog's blood sugar?" And he goes, "She sure does." And that let me know right then how people appreciate kindness. And at that point in time, I just took an effort. I started, and this is kind of a page out of Uncle Floyd's book too. Every man that would come in, I always shook their hand, but I started calling them brother. And when the ladies would come in, instead of just saying, you know, "Good morning, how you doing?" I started going over to them and giving them a hug. And before you knew it, I called all the ladies, I called them honey. And before you knew it, people were coming in there, ladies especially, would come in, and they'd come in to buy heartworm pills or something, and they'll say, "Well, I need to give Dr. Lee a hug before I go." And my goodness, did that little bit of kindness build an incredible practice of people who sincerely love me, and I sincerely love them. But it's just kindness. It's such an easy thing to do, but it's also such an easy thing to overlook. You get in a hurry and you just forget about it. But I just made it a habit, and that spilled over not just in my practice as a veterinarian, but also just like today. Anytime I'm in a store and some little old lady walks by, I commonly will say things like, "That sure is a pretty dress you have on today," and I don't say anything else. And it's amazing the smiles that I get. People have forgotten kindness, and they're not used to hearing it. And when they do, it's very refreshing. And granted, you have to kind of watch the way you say it and who you say it to, because it can certainly be taken as, that guy's creepy. So it's kind of a fine balance. I try not to be that guy, if you know what I mean. And a funny thing about calling all the guys brother, when they'd come in the exam room, I go, "Hey, brother, how's it going?" and things like that. Allie came, and her first year in vet school, she came back, and she worked in the clinic with me. And at the end of the year, I said, "Allie, what did you think about this year?" I said, "What do you think about being a veterinarian and all that kind of stuff?" She says, "I think I'm really going to enjoy it, Dad." She said, "But there's one thing I didn't realize." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "I never knew I had so many uncles." But a couple of years ago on this channel, we talked about a guy that injected kindness into millions of homes and millions of little minds throughout this world, injecting kindness into them, in a lot of cases probably in homes that never knew kindness. And that was Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers talked of all types of problems that faced kids in a way where kids could understand. And they could understand that it's okay, and they could also understand that people love them. Fred Rogers helped so many kids get through tough times just by being their neighbor. And none of them were less important than Jeff Erlanger.
When I was about 7 months old, I had a tumor, and it broke the nerves to tell my hands and legs what to do.
I see.
And they tried to cut the tumor, but they couldn't get it, and I became handicapped.
When he first started on Mr. Rogers' show, he was about 5 to 6 years of age and made about 5 or 6 more appearances through his young life. Fred Rogers commonly talked about Jeff Erlanger's presence on Mr. Rogers' show helped hundreds and hundreds of other children who also had serious maladies learn to cope with their problems, learn to get by in society, realize what they had, that they were not the only ones, and that people loved them too. Thanks to Fred Rogers and a lot of hard work by Jeff Erlanger, Jeff became a major spokesperson for people with physical disabilities. And here's Jeff later in life making a surprise visit at an award show honoring Fred Rogers.
I'm so glad to see you. Oh, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Oh,
It's an honor to be here tonight, to be part of your proud this proud moment. When you tell people that it's you I like, we know that you really mean it. And tonight, I want to let you know that on behalf of millions of children and grown-ups, it is you that I like.
And yes, today it seems that we do have to look harder to see kindness in action. But watch this little video right here, and it may restore your faith just a tad. You'll see here a young lady about to put fuel in her car, and she is counting her change on her hood. And that does not go unnoticed by the guy that's fueling up his car right beside her. When the young lady leaves to go into the store, he reaches around with his gas nozzle and he fills up her car. And once it's full, he leaves the nozzle there so she won't try to put more fuel in it. And he gets in his car and just leaves.
Huh?
I want to know what we're looking
Oh,
at.
dude, it's this guy. He just pumped this lady's gas over here and he left.
And when the young lady comes back out to her car, she's obviously confused. She has to stand there and look at it and try to figure out what has happened. She even turns her key on to check her gas gauge. And you can tell then she's becoming pretty overwhelmed.
Oh.
And look, nobody's around, so.
Then she takes the nozzle, walks around to the other gas pump and puts it away. And finally, before she gets in her car, you'll see her raise an arm of thanks. And folks, one thing to remember with all the horrible things going on in the world right now is kindness does not exist on its own. It requires a catalyst like you and a catalyst like me. Good thing about kindness, though, is it is infectious. Once it starts to spread, once the little catalyst spreads it, it spreads like wildfire. So let's do our part and let's be the catalyst. I challenge each and every one of you, and I challenge myself too, to call someone today, not tomorrow, today. Once you put it off, it just keeps getting put off. Call someone today, someone you haven't talked to in a long time, someone you love, and just tell them you love them. And then just let the conversation go from there. That's all you have to do. Just be kind. Well, folks, that's about it from out here on the ranch today, or in the shop again today. Once again, it's raining, and we're not complaining. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here. I know this was a tough video to endure, but golly, with things that have been happening, it was really heavy on my heart, and I just felt we needed to work on our kindness. We need to change the world. God bless you all. Thank you for being here today, and I want you to always remember I love you. Bye-bye now.
She didn't have to sign. How great.
So what you doing there, Al?
Neutering a dog, Dad.
All right. Who's going to learn you?
That's a mistake.